right, everybody, it is 4 p.m. We're going to get started with our final and most wonderful panel of the day. And I know it's cold out there in this sandbox room, but these panelists are going to heat it up for us, so don't worry. Today's final panel explores how PlaySocial, a digital game in development, helps families navigate social media, AI, and digital spaces together, sparking conversation and building real skills for connection and well-being online and off. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Jennifer Javornik, Lynn, Fiellin, Jane Lee, and Laura Erickson-Schroth.
Thank you, everyone, for coming to our panel. We're really excited to have you. We brought together people from a lot of different disciplines to have this important conversation. The format is we are going to, each panelist is going to do just a short introduction about who they are and their perspective on this topic. We're then going to have I'm going to moderate a few questions, and then we're going to open it up to the audience. So please keep track of what you want to know. And we know there's great minds in this room who make amazing games, so we'd really love it to be really interactive. So with that, where do I point? Not at the screen. Go. What if you just push the button? Yeah. Yeah, button. Technical assistance.
Like the rest of us.
Just like
I'm the least techie person. I'm a psychiatrist, so it's not me.
I think you're first. Oh, you have one. Oh, did you get it too? No, but Leah's going to do it. I don't think so, unless I'm doing the wrong. Aha. Oh. Great. Don't go far. Okay, Lynn, it's you. It's me? You're up. Ready? Yeah.
Can you hear? Yes. So hi, everyone. Thanks for sticking with us till the near end of the day. My name is Lynn Fiellin. I'm going to tell you just real quickly how I got to this space. So I am trained as a physician researcher and was really time and time again hearing from folks, young adults mostly, who I was taking care of, about how they were struggling with issues around mental health and addiction. And I was much more in the treatment area and felt very much like I wanted to figure out how to address these issues way earlier, when kids were younger, when maybe they were learning decision making and gathering information about how to make healthy decisions. So I made a major pivot professionally and moved towards prevention in a younger population, and thought, well, video games might be a way where we can get at kids in a space where they want to be, where they are, that we could really make a change. I had 3 teenagers at home who were all very engaged in video games, and it felt like that might be a way to really give them information in a way that they might not even know they were getting a dose of something healthy. So 17 years ago, I followed through with that. I received a large grant from the NIH, created the Play to Prevent Lab, which for up to the first 15 years was at Yale University, and now is at Dartmouth College with me. And at the Play to Prevent Lab, as you can see, we focus on building and evaluating digital health games as video games for adolescent behavioral health. I'm showing you 3 games that we have developed and tested here out of the 5 that we've created, all with our partners at Shell Games. Play Forward was our first game where we focused on risk reduction and HIV prevention in young kids. Smokescreen focuses on vaping and smoking prevention. And then Play Smart is our most recent game, focusing on mental health and opioid misuse, which I'll talk with you a little bit more about. We have now published 1 paper and are about to publish a second paper on the impact of Play Smart. We were able to demonstrate a 15 to 20% greater reduction in depressive symptoms in the group of high schoolers that played the Play Smart game. And so that was pretty compelling in terms of being able to demonstrate that after really only on average about 3 hours of gameplay. As was mentioned, we have a game in development with or starting development with our partners at Filament Games called PlaySocial, which is going to be a next generation family-centered digital game focused really on young people and families and helping them to navigate social media as well as other digital environments, helping them sort of combat what we are seeing as some of the mental health issues related to social media, building connection and communication with families, and reducing loneliness. So I will turn it over to our next speaker.
I think I'll just sit here because I don't have any slides. My name is Laura Erickson-Schroth. I'm a psychiatrist. I'm the chief medical officer at the JED Foundation, which is a national nonprofit that protects emotional health and prevents suicide for teens and young adults. Our work has traditionally been doing technical assistance with schools and now community organizations to help them set up their systems to improve mental health and prevent suicide for young people. But over the last, now it's been, 17 years, I think, we've been working in AI media tech. At the time, AI didn't exist, so media and tech, and more recently AI, so that we're in the environments that young people are in. And so, that's sort of the standpoint I come from, thinking about the power of play and gaming and these environments that young people are in, and just really excited by a lot of the work that folks like you are doing.
Great, I think that's me. I'm Jane. I am the director of production at iThrive Games. We co-create meaningful learning experiences, mostly social and emotional, for teenagers. We really specialize in the teenage population because we saw that there were so many learning experiences designed for younger students and then for adults or sort of university age onwards, but the high school years are really sort of, there's a tremendous opportunity there to be working with young people, and there just really aren't as many experiences designed for them. So we specialize in that area. That can look like curriculum, digital games, VR games, card games, and we do all of our work by co-designing with young people.
Thanks so much. And I'm Jennifer Javornik. I'm the Chief Partnerships Officer for Filament Games. We're a studio that makes games for positive impact for all ages, any content area, and any kind of device. But over the years, obviously, we've had a big concentration of games for middle school and high schoolers. So we're really excited. I'm really excited to be on this panel with all my friends. Okay. So I have some questions to start off. And Laura, we're going to start with you. Let me put on my glasses. This will go better. What are the mental health benefits of playing games and engaging caregivers in digital environments with their kids?
I love this question. I kind of think about three different kind of categories. First of all, what does the research tell us about just play in general? And then what about gaming and video games? And then what about playing kind of together? And when I think about the first category around play, there's so much evidence that just play, the idea of spending time doing joyful things and being creative, that's really helpful for young people's development. So, obviously creativity in their brains and thinking, cognitive development and problem solving, sort of puzzles, thinking about the world, expanding, your mind, connections with other people. We talk a lot, you've probably seen a lot of the books that have come out recently around like free play and how young people have lost this connection to being able to spend time outdoors together, running around, engaging in free play and negotiating relationships. I think I would throw in a caveat there that for me, I think some of those folks that are talking about that miss things like bullying, for example. There's some things that are going on when there's free play happening. So I really love the idea of free play, and I think there is a lot of evidence that that's really helpful. But I think there are instances where adults have to be involved in some of the supervision around play. When it comes to sort of, gaming and video games, I think there are a lot of the same benefits. Things like learning teamwork and cooperation and negotiating relationships and managing emotions, learning how to handle winning and losing and things like that. So I think that you see a lot of the same things. I also see a lot of identity development in gaming. So my main job is at the Jed Foundation, but I work one afternoon a week at a place called Hetrick Martin Institute, which is an LGBTQ youth drop-in center here in New York at Astor Place. And one of the therapists runs an open group called Get Psyched, and sometimes he calls it Get Psyched for Games. And basically every week it's young people coming in and playing games together and talking about them. And a lot of times what I see is there's obviously this like connection between the young people in the room, having an adult that cares about them there, that wants to engage in conversations that are directly, it's direct conversations about mental health a lot of the times, but there's also a lot of identity conversations and like, how cool is it that there is a queer character in this? One of my favorites was going to when they were playing Last of Us. It's just so fun to see young people sort of trying things on and seeing characters that might reflect who they are. And that's so important for your mental health and for your identity development. So those are kind of some of the things I think about. And then when it comes to, play in families, I think about that. How do you get to know, your child, the young person in your life? And it's through the things that they love to do. Just like Jed thinks about that on a sort of community level, like how do we get into the places and spaces where young people are and understand what's going on? That's the same thing in your family or with, whoever the young people, if you have nieces, nephews, whoever in your life. Spending time with them. And when they're younger, I mean, we talk about this all the time. When they're younger, you can keep up with them. Maybe you all can keep up with them when they're teenagers too. I'm terrible at video games, actually. So, playing games that, when they're younger together and spending time together and then, learning, teamwork together again, learning how to, sort of, connect with another person through something, learning about what they're interested in. And then as they get a little bit older, it's more sort of, they want to individuate and they want to spend time, maybe gaming with their friends. So, being curious about what they're interested in, that helps to build a relationship and sort of a foundation for what, how they're exploring life, how they're being creative. So I think there's just so much, I mean, we could talk about this forever. There's just so much, so much benefit to play in general and to gaming and to doing that as a family.
Thanks so much. Laura touched on this a bit, Jane, but I'd love to hear from you of why play is important and how does it relate to the teen brain?
Yeah, so as Laura said, so many great things about play, and I think, I'm probably preaching to the choir a little bit here. We are at a Games for Change conference where most of us in the room are game designers or people who love games. I think the thing I always say is, play is not a break from real life. It's part of real life. It's, the preferred way for the brain to learn. And so during play, it's so possible to create a meaningful memory that will stay with you your whole life. And games create really strong memories because they can be really fun and really powerful. And so I think play is really important as a way to connect people, an opportunity for people to practice social skills. And at iThrive, we really think a lot about the teen brain. And during adolescence, it's just a time of huge plasticity in the teen brain, right? Like the experiences that you have as a teenager have the highest impact on who you're going to become as an adult. It's just a tremendous time. Your brain is absorbing information at an astonishing rate. And teens are just naturally in a state of mind in their brain development to be more prone to risk-taking, to be questioning social structures. They're developing really core social skills and leadership skills. And these are things that you can really do in games well. I also think in families, play is such a great way to talk about things sometimes that are hard to talk about. I worked on a game last year with some students out in Dallas. We didn't know what kind of game we were going to make. We asked them what kind of game they wanted to make. And they said, we really want to make a game that helps adults understand how their words hurt us as young people. And so they made a game called The Porcelain Child, which is about sort of the things that adults say to young people that really break a child. It's actually really sad and very on the nose. But what I found so interesting was that when we played it with adults, they were all having really transformational experiences of realizing, oh, well, you know what, this was just something my parent said to me, but now that I'm playing this game, I'm realizing I've said that to my kid and I really don't like it. And so I think games are just a really great vehicle for having sometimes conversations about tough things. And like you were saying earlier, the identity formation piece, that can be really tough to talk about.
Thanks, Jane. Lynn, what have you learned so far in building PlaySocial to address social media and mental health in youth and their families?
I'm the slide lady, so here we go again. Oh. Okay. So listening to everyone talk about this, and also the fact that, you know, today the Raising Good Gamers was launched, and that paper is out for anyone who is looking for that. That is, I found it on LinkedIn, and that is very timely because it focuses really on parents and parents' roles in, you know, their kids and kids' play. And listening to you guys talk about this is something that, you know, for the work that we've done, we really haven't expanded into parents and families. We've always built our games just for kids, and what we've increasingly seen, especially with these evolving digital environments, is how critically important parents are to be a part of this, not only for their kids, but also for them to understand what their kids are doing and what their kids are being exposed to and what their kids are learning. And so, as I mentioned, we have started we've completed now most of the formative work of this game, PlaySocial, which again will focus on helping kids navigate social media with the goal of combating some of the mental health issues we're seeing and talking to them and their parents. And so we have conducted 7 focus groups now with 34 teens. This is work that's been supported by the Young Futures organization. If you don't know them, you should look them up because they are firmly planted in the area of technology, play, digital health, teenagers, mental health. And we worked with folks here in New York City at the New York City Department of Health and Mental Health, the Digital Wellness Lab, which is up in Boston, and the National Bring Change to Mind organization. And this is just sort of a synopsis of what we have started learning in these discussions with kids about social media. Some of this is probably not going to be a huge surprise because these are things we've now been hearing for a while, but these are just some of the points. They report the comparison hurts. Teens constantly measure themselves against what they see online, and it leaves them feeling worse about themselves in many cases. They can't just log off. So this is something that, in hearing some of these conversations, the lengths that kids will go to separate themselves from social media, like having someone hide their devices, you know, whatever, I mean, really anything to take it out of their hands, really showing how critical it is to them. They know that at times social media can harm them, but quitting means losing touch with friends. So there's also some really important and powerful aspects of social media. So they're really kind of stuck. They recognize all of the positive and important parts of it, but then also recognize how it's really can be challenging for them. Many of these kids felt like their parents didn't get it, that every conversation they might have with their parents about social media would turn into a lecture, so they really stopped talking. So this was one key point in thinking about how we can bring parents into the loop so that they can be constructive and productive in terms of these conversations with their teens, so that they are aware and they're helping, and then their teens aren't struggling alone. And teens really said, and they were very, very forthcoming about this, is that they want tools. They don't want warnings. They don't want bans. They don't want things taken away from them. They want help in figuring out how to be in these environments, again, be it social media or AI or wherever, that in which they can be safe and healthy. So they asked for real skills, how to cope, how to potentially cut back, and how to talk to their parents in a way that could be helpful both to them and their parents. So our introduction to these discussions was talking to them about PlaySocial, really building this game from their ideas. Again, we start, as many people discussed, really from co-designing with young people, in this case now co-designing with young people and their parents. to figure out what are real choices they've had to make in social media, real consequences they've experienced, and then also really helping them level set on what they see as being real and what's not real, and help them learn, better how to discern these things and navigate in a way that they can, take advantage of the healthy and productive parts of this medium.
Thanks, Lynn. Let's go back to our smiling faces. Okay. I thought I would talk maybe a little bit about how games can intentionally involve parents, and I can give you one example that we developed at Filament Games, but I'd love to hear from the audience if any of you have experimented with mechanics that involve parents. If you came to, one of my colleagues, Kelly, was on a panel with the people at Bezos Family Foundation. We just worked on a game called Tales from the Middle. It's to support elementary school kids with the transition through middle school. And what, a lot of what the experts told us is like parents play a critical role. We understood that. So then the question is like, well, how do you instantiate that as mechanics in a game, or do you? So we had a lot of debates internally on how to do that, whether it was just going to be, recommendations to parents of how to talk about it, or if we'd actually develop features. Things we thought about are things like not all parents are available at the exact moment that the child is playing the game, especially if the teen was going to be playing it at school. So definitely we felt that any involvement from the parents had to be asynchronous. We also wanted to recognize that every parental-child relationship is unique, and for whatever reason, there may be youth that did not want to involve their parents, so we knew that it had to be completely optional for the parents to be involved. We had to think about, should this if it's going to be played in school, should it be sent to the parents first so they know it's coming, or it should be something initiated from the youth? Then there's the whole question of like consent. How are we actually going to reach out? How is the game going to reach out to parents? What consent needs to be applied? How technically is going to work? So those are all things that at least we've thought about with that game. I don't know if there's anyone in the room who's also thinking about this and experimenting with mechanics. If so, we'd love to hear how you've approached it. No one? Okay. Oh, good. Yeah.
That assessment is happening from like within the game, that's no good. So one interesting thing is we wanted to share some creative work with the player's parent, but not covertly, because then it will kind of give away the game that anything could be sent to the parent that they're doing, and so they're being watched essentially. So all we did is add a send to my grown-up button, and there was no alternative. They had to send it to their grown-up, but at least they knew like when things were getting sent to their grown-up, and that made a big difference.
Yeah, interesting. Thanks, Bobby. Okay, I'm going to give you this. I'll do the rest of it from the audience.
I can pass this off to the next person. I can pass this off to the next person.
I had one. If that's. I made a Roblox game that was kind of made for parents and kids who don't live together, that they can have a place to play together. One thing that I found really interesting in playtesting was that oftentimes parents didn't have much experience navigating a 3D space, so it was very hard for them to. When especially teenagers would play, the teenagers would ditch their parents very quickly, and the parent would spend the rest of the time walking around in circles trying to find. So I made, you can have the thing where the triangle kind of points to where they are on the screen, and then I added a button that would just teleport either person to. That seemed to make it much simpler. And I think kind of a lesson I learned was that sometimes there can be an assumption that everyone coming in will kind of have the ability to play the game. But sometimes you have to go down to the very basic level of, can they navigate the space? Can both parties navigate the spaces? And anyway, that was something I learned in playtesting.
That's sort of, I was going to say, that reminds me of, there's a group that's sort of connecting grandparents with kids. And they ran into the same kind of questions around like needing to make sure that the grandparents could access technology in the ways that, so they made it basically so like the kids could use an iPad and the grandparents could use, just a regular phone if that was all they had. That's a great idea.
Makes sense. So now it would be a good time. I'm going to ask the audience if you have any questions for the panel. Laura, you mentioned in your introduction that you guys think about technology broadly. Are there any particular impacts that you find are of note in the space of AI in particular that you wanted to share?
Yeah, and I'm sure I'm sure lots of people in the room have thoughts on this too, but through JED, the way that we work in the AI space is a couple of different things. One is, we have direct connections with all of the sort of large frontier model companies. If they have questions around, for example, like, we're trying to build in responses for suicide prevention, things like that. We do a lot of work on benchmarking. So there are a couple of open source benchmarking projects. One's called Cora, one's called Mila. And they sort of do, gold standards for each sort of area that would affect young people's mental health. And they look, or, I think they do health in general, and they look across. And I think we're seeing a lot. I think, the introduction of AI is really going to change how all of our worlds work. And that's going to be true for young people. They're coming into a world, especially, I have a daughter who's a year and a half. And they're coming into a world where things are just going to work really differently. So I think when we talk about AI and young people, the larger conversations are typically around chatbots. That's the thing that's sort of the most common right now that people are talking about. But we all know in this room that AI is many different things. It's the algorithms behind our shopping experiences, our social media experiences. Agentic AI is coming so that young people are going to be able to be like, apply to college for me. Right? Or unfortunately, bully this person for me, or whatever it is. So I think, but the conversations right now are mostly around chatbots. And I think, there's a lot to think about there in terms of, obviously there's clear dangers if they provide dangerous advice, but there's also sort of just how are they relationally interacting with young people. And I do a lot of these reviews of how, these multi-turn conversations and how they're interacting. And they're really built, we all know, to make money. And so they're, creating these ongoing conversations that are very relational, and a lot of times taking away from, pulling young people out of maybe, potential relationships in real life. And then there are also some positives. There are also ways that young people are, it's a low barrier to seeking out help for things like your mental health. Or a lot of young people wouldn't call it, mental health help seeking, but they're asking questions about, can you help me draft a text to a friend, or what do you think this person means, or things like that. And so I think we're seeing that this is an entry point, and if it's going to be an entry point, you can't fight technology. You have to see what are the ways that we can help to make this better. How can it help to get young people to other human beings? I'm seeing Jane nod a lot, so I don't know. I'm sure a lot of other people in this room have thoughts on this. And chatbot-like features are built in to gaming now. Into the non-player characters having sort of AI, relationships with humans. So that's going to be a big issue in gaming, I think.
Yeah, I think like everything, like with games, there's good and bad, and this is just an area that has been so, the genie is out of the bottle and we haven't had a lot of time to prep for it. I think there's amazing qualities to it. Like you have young people who are neurodivergent asking ChatGPT to help them figure out how to talk to a professor about getting an extension on a paper, and for the first time ever, it's working. But I also know, there are folks at Meta who have told me most of the people who are using their Instagram AI avatars are using them for companionship. And I really just worry about young people's ability to develop social skills in that structure.
What do you all think? Jump in.
So sorry, I came in a little late, so I missed some of the early stuff. But I am also building in the family space, and we haven't started our play testing yet. But a lot of the feedback that I'm getting from parents on the note of AI is they're like, we don't want anything AI with our like touching our children. And we're, from like the development perspective, we're thinking like, well, if we did integrate AI, we could make a much more personalized experience. It's not necessarily the chat bot. But I'm curious from your experience, like, did you get that kind of similar pushback from parents? And also, like, how are the kids thinking about AI? Because, like, they're the ones who are going to have the lifelong experience with it. And I feel like often the kids' perspective is ignored because us adults know best, right? So I'm just curious what your experience is with the different perspectives.
Well, we haven't gone that's sort of the next project to come. I've certainly anecdotally heard that from parents and caregivers where they just don't want, anything to do with it. Again, kind of like both of you said, the cat's out of the box. I mean, and quite frankly, AI is everywhere around all of us and our children in so many different ways. So to sort of, so it would be an artificial distinction to think that we could do something without it. As far as kids, again, we haven't done the formal kind of, focus group or interview work around that. Maybe other folks, I'd be interested, because it's a great question from both sides, and to get that perspective in terms of folks who have talked to parents or families and kids about AI in the games they play, AI from an educational standpoint.
I would add, I mean, if we're asking about sort of what young people are saying, I think they're excited and scared and not sure, and they really, just like everything else in the world, they want to understand it, and they want to know, how do I tell the difference between what's real and fake? How do I, know if I'm being manipulated? I find the conversations that are the most interesting are like when I talk to teenagers about like, okay, so, chatbots, why do they exist? Like, who makes them? How does that company make money? Like, what does that mean about the way that it's going to interact with you? And they like actually love thinking about that stuff. So that's where I think teenagers and young adults want to be. They want to be talking about this. They want to be thinking about it. They actually want to know, they're interested in how things work.
Well, once I do some testing, I'll let you know what we find.
Please let us know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering what kind of work you've done in the neurodivergent space, because I know that a lot of families who have neurodivergent children find that gaming is a lifeline in terms of helping them communicate and learning real skills that help them move and feel included. Have you done any sort of testing in that space?
Well, I can start out. We're about halfway through just completing the formative work on a game that we are designing for kids with autism and their families to take really sort of based on positive psychology and take a strength-based approach. So much in the field is focusing on the deficits and challenges, and yet, there's so many strengths, and there's so many strengths that, now having spoken with dozens of kids and families and siblings, they identify so many strengths. So to really create a game that is focusing on these strengths and helping kids recognize them squarely and helping their families recognize them, with the hope of also increasing, paths of communication and connection through the game between these kids and their families. When we were first approached about this game, it was very clear, just like you said, is that, kids, neurodivergent kids, find learning from games to be really powerful. It's a really great space for them. And so to take advantage of that and make it something really positive feels like a huge opportunity. And parents who we've spoken with are so excited about the idea of building a game like this for their kids, for their community, to help them connect with their kids. So that's a game that we are working on with Filament and just about to start really the development phase. So I don't know if you guys have been working with other folks having designed, developed with neurodivergent kids' families.
I love ideas. We have a large this is not related to gaming, but we have a large project where we're working with a group called the Jake Collective to do a whole bunch of research and focus groups and conversations to learn about suicide and neurodivergent young people, because there are higher rates. And the idea is that we'd use that to help to adjust the ways that we work with schools and with community organizations, because our work is sort of all the way upstream to downstream suicide prevention. So everything from like life skills and community connection and, making sure young people know, how to reach out for help, to crisis management and things like that. So we're thinking a lot right now about how to do that kind of work in like systems within schools and organizations. And if there are ways or ideas that people have for how to involve gaming in that, would love to know about them.
I thought there were a few more hands raised. Does anyone else have questions or wanted to contribute? You guys, everyone I assume here works in games to some capacity. I think ever since I entered the game industry and other adults found out that there's always a moment where someone takes me aside and says, okay, I know you work in video games, but my kid, he just like stays up till 2 a.m. and he's like addicted and I hate it and he won't put it down. I know what my answer is in that situations, to kind of give to the parent in crisis with their gamer child. But I'm interested from the audience, how, I'm assuming you're getting the same questions, and how do you generally respond?
Okay, full transparency, I'm from Roblox. So I get that question a lot. We get that question a lot. And so one of the things that we talk about is it impacting their sleep? Are they eating well? Are they finishing their schoolwork on time? And typically the parents say, yeah. I'm like, okay, they're going to be okay, first of all. And what I recommend is developing a contract with their child that the child actually drafts. And it makes things a lot easier to be able to have that discussion to when it's time to shut things off, because the child actually has developed that contract. And we see a lot of wins on that front. So it's just one of many, many tactics. But we have a lot of conversation starters for parents, things like that, on our families page. So if you go to our corp site, we have a lot of resources that can be used for parents that help guide them through all these tough discussions.
Thanks for sharing that. There's someone else back here.
Hi, my response is, sounds like they're really interested in the game. Have you thought about joining them? Because I feel like a lot of the time tapping into young adults' interests is really important, and being able to establish rapport and that you could be potentially missing out on a really great opportunity to A, understand what your kid is up to, and B, bond with them over something they're clearly passionate about.
Thanks for sharing that. Yes, Bobby.
I often wonder if they're also sort of binging other media things. Because, like, if some nights they're up late playing games, some nights they can't put a book down, some nights then okay, maybe they have to deal with just that binging behavior in general, but at least they're getting a nice balance of and if they have a way to stop, they should let me know as well, because I
Yeah, thanks. I often say that too, being like, well, if your kid is a toddler and really likes cars, you're getting on your hands and knees and playing with cars, whether you're interested in cars or not. But then inevitably what they say is, yeah, but I'm not good at video games. Like, I'm really bad at them. I don't like them. I get frazzled. What do I do? And then I say, well, listen, if your kid's into Taekwondo, you don't have to do Taekwondo to talk to them about Taekwondo. You can ask just questions. You can go to their matches. You can have them share the videos they're binging about Taekwondo. I mean, we're parents. We're really good at listening to a lot of conversations about things we don't understand. Yes.
Hi, this is sort of, I think it's related. You talked about co-creating with kids and their parents and together, and I'm curious if anyone has any more context, kind of nuance of how that works at the different stages of co-creation. How do you, what succeeds bringing parents and kids in together to talk about things in the ideation stage and others, and any examples?
Well, I can speak more to the kids part, because that's something we've done for a long time, and sort of learned the hard way when we first started way back with our first game development project, and about 6 months in realized we just totally didn't know what we were doing. We were, someone said we were a bunch of well-educated adults who had no idea what it was like to be a teenager, and so kind of had to pause and start again and involve teens. And so that is something that, again, like with this most current project, doing focus groups, iterative focus groups, collecting all that information, some cases having, individual interviews, and then really sort of whatever is created, bringing it back to them, be it artwork, be it voice, be it, every sort of part before it all comes together, before it's like too far gone, to be able to say, are we on track? Is this a yay or a nay? So really keeping them involved all along the way. Parents, these projects, both the one that PlaySocial as well as this game for kids with autism and their parents, that's new for us. So it's trying to figure out how to really talk with them about these different content areas. And specifically, especially for the one with kids with autism, is to really come right out and say to their parents, what would you see this game being like? Like, how would you like to be involved with this game? What would work for you? Which we have to do the same thing with the kids, because we need both parties to feel good and want to be involved. So we're just really starting to try to figure out how to do that with parents. If anyone has thoughts, whether it's games or otherwise, but we're so used to, for 15 years we've been talking to kids and had them involved all the way. Parents, even though I'm a parent, parents it's trickier, right? There are all sorts of things, like you said very concretely, parents who said, I don't want my kids involved with AI at all. And it's like, well, that's some world out there. But, and so it's trying to work with them on a very realistic level that honestly I can relate to. We as parents don't always want to know about what the realities are, but if we're really going to help their kids, we need to get at that with parents as well. So if anyone else has thoughts about the parent part, that is something very new to us.
Yeah, I haven't worked explicitly with parent-child, and I think there is a very specific relationship there, so I won't speak about that, but I have done intergenerational co-design where we're really looking at adults and young people working together. I think what I always try to make sure is happening is that how can I make them be on the same team? Because youth are always telling me, I'm tokenized. Even when I am asked to speak, I'm being treated like, oh, you're so brilliant for your age, like you're so wonderful for your age, which is so dismissive. And so I'm always thinking, how can I get the adults and young people in the room to see each other as peers? And I think the way that I do that a lot is like, how can I create some intimacy? How can I create smaller spaces where, I just did this project where young people sat in a little podcast booth with adults and said, what's one thing you wish you could tell your younger self? And
And we
just
know
that,
podcast booths are tiny.
and they're tiny. Right? But just that one little question, by the end of the night, I had the young people saying, that really raised the bar for how I expect people in general to be with me, because I didn't realize that such a small thing could create such vulnerability and familiarity. And by the end of the night, we were like, we want the same things, we care about the same things. They really felt like they were on the same team. So they were prototyping ideas and able to work together. So that's what I would experiment with. I do think the parent-child relationship is obviously very different. But yeah, how can we all show up and be on the same team?
Well, thanks so much. I think that's our time for the panel. Thanks to everyone for attending. We'll stay up here in the front if anyone has any additional questions. Thanks so much.
Thanks.